Hello, thank you for joining. If somebody could give me a thumbs up in the comments to let me know if the audio and the video quality are good. Because even though we live in the city, it's like I live in Podon Collar with my internet connection here. Hi, SJ. Thank you for the hair tonic spray. It came this week and I've been using it and I'm excited. Can you tell I already have more hair? No, you can't, but I'm very excited and hopeful that it will work. So thank you, SJ. Hi, AM Cross. I see you're a new member, so welcome. Thank you for joining. And we have Marina joining. Audio is good, a little blurry. I was afraid you'd say that. I'm going to go back through my hotspot. That seems to fix the issue. So I will change my internet to being through the hotspot, and we'll see how that goes. Did that fix the camera? Oh, all right. Okay, Annabelle already said it's much better. I'm telling you, my phone works better than our home router, and it's not supposed to be that way. But on my list of parties, that ranks about 500 and something. Okay, better. All right. Hey, thank you for joining. So today is February 1st. Happy February, the first of the month. And on the What's New Wednesday happens every Wednesday around 1:15 p.m. Not like I'm ever late or anything. But the first one of each month is open to the general public, which is today. And in 4 weeks from now, it will be public again for everybody just because February is such a short month. So otherwise, the other 3 weeks of the month is with channel membership only. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, the channel membership allows me to earn a small profit in exchange for making time every week to do this. And number two, it keeps the weirdos out because, if the content's out there free and easily accessible, it attracts a lot more weird people than if there's a kind of a portal gateway where, what do you call it? A paywall. I guess it is a paywall that to the content. So it keeps the weirdos out because they're, too broke to have any extra just for snarking. So not worth it just for snarking. And then I also share, not so much in the public ones, but in the ones that are private, I share a little bit more about what's going on in our personal lives on a week-to-week basis, just because, there aren't any random people in there off the internet that I have no idea who they are. So today we're going to go straight into topic. And the next week I'll catch up with what's going on in our family. Not anything big or exciting, just a little chit-chat usually. But before I get into topic, if you have any topic ideas for next week or going forward, or if you have any questions, please feel free to leave those in the live chat there, and I will look through them periodically. So hello, Annabelle. Hello, Jordan. Ironic topic today, currently sleep deprived. I am so sorry. Yes, I'm laughing, but I'm laughing because it's sad and true. So I'm guessing, Jordan, that your kids are sick because it's that time of year and mom gets no sleep. And how am I guessing that? Because that's what's going on here. Oliver has been nursing a cold for 2 weeks now. 2 weeks? Has been 2 weeks? I think it's been a week and a half at least, maybe 2 weeks. And it's not really bad. Like he's not like running a fever or screaming in pain from ear pain or anything. He's just been running a runny nose and a little bit harder to sleep at night. And he just started coughing last night. So I spent most of the night keeping him upright and rubbing him and patting him. And so yes, sleep deprived. How did I guess? See, that's what Jordan said. That's exactly what it is. It's that time of year. And yeah, typically that's what happens. So anyway, let's talk about babies and sleep. Now, the first thing I want to say is that everything you're about to say is what works for us. And this is not a moral issue. There's no right and wrong. I mean, I guess there are right and wrongs about people sleeping in the same bed together, but I'm talking about as far as with kids. Um, whatever I'm saying is not like the moral correct way. And if you do anything different, it is immoral and incorrect or sinful. This is what works for us. I think it's what would work probably for most people in a similar situation. But if something works different for you, don't feel bad about that. So, with that being said, the right sleep arrangement, just in general for your family, is the one where the most people get the most sleep, whatever that is. Now, for some people, that might be putting their baby in the nursery next door and putting in earplugs and going to sleep. I have heard of one large family mom. I believe she had 8 or 9 or 10 kids, somewhere in that neighborhood. And she would sleep with earplugs in so that she wouldn't wake up if the kids woke up. And as a matter of fact, if the kids did wake up, they woke her husband and then he would wake her. That way she could still help them, but she wouldn't wake up every time. I like to say I wake up if an ant sneezes, which is pretty accurate. So I guess every time an ant sneezed, she wouldn't wake up. So definitely not what I would choose to do, but I'm not going to knock it because sleep is really, really important for your overall health. It's super important for your metabolism, for your hormones, for your skin, your overall well being. You heal in your sleep. So if you're lacking sleep, you're going to wear out before your time, but it also affects your mental health. So it's kind of like oxygen, you need it. Now, thankfully, unlike breathing, which you have to do all the time, all day long, gets put together, but you do need good sleep. So if that's what it takes, the right sleep arrangement is what works best for you, where everybody gets the most sleep. Now, the other thing is that there are things that interfere with sleep, and I think eliminating those is a great first step. And I'm just going to step on toes right out of the gate here, but caffeine is not your friend. Caffeine is like a credit card with a really high APR. So if you drink coffee, yes, it'll ring at the register, but then later in the day you get the bill, and the longer you drink coffee and the more you drink coffee, the more into the red you go, and then there's your accruing interest. So if you are a caffeine addict, you may really want to reevaluate that. And there is a book on Audible, and it's free if you have an Audible membership. I'm going to pull up. I think it's just called Caffeine. And it is a very good book because it kind of looks at the issue from both sides. Okay, let me find it here. I actually went away after listening to the book. I actually went away with a new appreciation for caffeine. And I was like, wow, caffeine really does have some really good benefits. Yes, it's called Caffeine by Michael Pollan. Okay, it won't pull up, so you'll just have to see it like this. So this is free to listen to. If you have the Audible membership, you don't have to use one of your credits for that. And it's not like caffeine is bad, caffeine is evil, do away with all caffeine kind of book. In fact, the author himself is an avid coffee drinker. But it explains what caffeine does and what the dangers of caffeine are. For me, it's actually a tool where it's like, okay, I can use caffeine more to my advantage. And sometimes I do. I use caffeine if I have a long drive and I'm tired, because even though I never drink coffee and I sleep very little at night, I wake up of my own after approximately 6 hours. So for me, a full night is 6 hours. And on 6 hours, I can live happily ever after. But if I don't get enough sleep, or if I have a long drive, when I go to bed, I just turn off like a light. There's no laying there thinking. It's just a hard off switch, no dimmer, nothing. It's just off. So if I ever drive and I'm tired, I will just fall asleep at the wheel if I'm not careful. Like if I yawn once, I know I'm done for. So I typically front load with caffeine if I have to drive somewhere and it's either in the evening or during a time when I naturally tend to be drowsy, like during nap time, or if I'm sleep deprived, because I know that. So this book is not like saying caffeine is evil, caffeine is wrong, caffeine is sinful. I'm not saying any of that. It is a stimulant, and you're kind of making a credit card purchase there when you use caffeine, because when it gives you energy, it's not giving you any extra energy. You're not getting extra energy from caffeine. It's just drawing from your stores, and you will pay for it later with interest. And that interest is coming from your adrenals, and you might experience what's called adrenal fatigue. And I don't know a whole lot about it because thankfully it's not an issue I've ever dealt with. But people often wonder, how can I be as busy as I am and do as much as I do? And I'm not here to praise myself or sing my own praises, but just as a matter of fact, I typically get up anywhere between 6 and 7 in the morning, and I start getting ready for bed. Well, around 11, I'm like, okay, it's time to land the plane. And then I usually make it to bed by midnight, but otherwise I make it to bed by maybe 12:30 or 1. So depending on when I get to bed, then I get up around 6 or 7. And like I said, that's after I wake up on my own after about 6 hours. And in those 6 hours that I am in bed, I do feed the baby twice. So he usually eats around 1:30, and then he eats again around 4:30. He wakes up, and I make his bottles, and I feed him, and then he goes back to sleep. I go back to sleep. So a lot of times people ask, how can I function on so little sleep and be so happy about it? I don't drink caffeine, and I think that is probably like 90% of it. I think that makes a huge difference because I don't exercise. I mean, I do eat healthy, but I don't exercise other than just being on my feet all day. And I never feel like I need an 8 hours of sleep. To me, like, that sounds like a punishment to me. I kind of feel like a toddler being forced to nap when you tell me 8 hours of sleep a night. I'm like, you're wasting 2 hours of my life that I'm never getting back. Don't make me do that. So if you find that you might be drinking too much coffee, maybe you are. And that book is a really good starting point. Now, I know there's caffeine in green tea and black tea and chocolate and other things, Coca-Cola. So I don't know that anybody has a chocolate addiction enough to make a considerable increase in caffeine there, but maybe they do. I don't know. Anyway, with that being said, let's talk about babies. Let's start out with the babies, and let's move on up to, toddlers and kids in general. So typically I find, just in general, and this is just my opinion, I could just be completely out to lunch, but I think that American kids do not get enough sleep on average. And that in addition to not getting enough sleep, they have way too much say over how much or when they should sleep. Now, I kind of grew up a little bit more no nonsense because I was one of 5 and my mom was one of 6. So my grandma had 6 kids and my mom had 5 kids. And they were really strict about nap times and bedtimes. That always stuck with me. In fact, my grandma, God bless her, she was a wonderful lady. If I went to her house, even when I was 6 years old, it was like, no, you're taking a nap. 6-year-olds and down, take a nap at grandma's. And I didn't appreciate it then. I appreciate it now, but grandma was right. Of course she was. She knew what she was doing. So I think that in general, kids in America have too much say over their sleep and they don't sleep enough. Now, ironically, when a kid has not slept enough, they get really wired. So if you're thinking, I can't get my toddler to sleep, he's really wild, there's no way to make him sleep, probably the reason why he is wired is because he hasn't slept enough. Now, typically, I would say that, I'm not talking about a newborn now, but the average baby and toddler probably needs about 14 hours of sleep out of every 24. And we're going to talk about the newborns in a minute. So if they're only getting 10 or 12 hours, this is bad. It's bad because they're wired. And it's also bad because it does not give you any time where they're basically, you can think of sleep like an off switch. And I know they're not off because they might need something, they might wake up with a bad dream or, throw up in the middle of the night or have an accident or whatever. So they're not completely off, but most of the time they're mostly off, and it gives you a chance, because presumably you don't sleep 14 hours a night. It gives you a chance to do the things that you need to do away from kids. So I find that most kids in America sleep too little, and they get too much say over their sleep. It's like, well, he doesn't want to lie down, or he doesn't want to go to bed at 7:30, or he just wants to keep partying. That's not something that's open to them. I mean, most parents probably would not discuss whether their kids should brush their teeth, or whether they should do their schoolwork, or whether they should wear clothes out in public. There's certain minimums that we expect of them, and sleep somehow is exempt from that. Like, well, you can just sleep whenever you feel like it, I guess. And another funny one that ties in with that is the eating. In America, being a picky eater is allowed and accepted, and that's okay. It's kind of like you can pick your own clothes, and you can, that I'm okay with. But you can also pick when you sleep, or how much you sleep, and when you eat, and what you eat. And in a large family, you can't afford these luxuries. I mean, that might work with one kid or maybe with two kids. I'm going to stop real quick because somebody's saying there's no audio. All right. If you have no audio, would you please comment? Because, all right. Nobody at my house is on the internet, just for the record. Nobody's on the internet. I'm the only one on the internet. Okay. Karen said she can't hear me. Can anybody hear me? Every week. Okay. Anyone can't. Let's see. Some bratty kid who doesn't want to take a nap is messing with the internet. You know it. I am so sorry. I really need to figure this out. I have no idea why this is not working. Audio is really bad. Not happy about this. Okay, hear fine. I can hear. Anybody still have trouble hearing? Karen, leave me a comment. Anybody still have trouble hearing? I can hear now. Okay, Marina. I'm sorry. I have no idea what that's from. I did not change anything on my end. Nobody's on the internet in my house, which they should be, because they should be doing their schoolwork. But anyway, so yes, sleep, not something they get to choose a choice about. Now, I'm a firm believer in kids napping until they're 6 years old or in first grade, because after that they can work during the afternoon time. But even when they're not sleeping, even when they're not napping, they need a quiet afternoon time. At my house right now, it's 1:30, 1:40, and I have 5 kids in their desks working, and I have Chloe downstairs reading. She always gets her work done quietly, and then she reads. But the important thing is nobody's walking around, nobody's talking, and 3 kids are napping. And that's really, really important. Now, if your child is not used to napping, you have a hard row to hoe ahead of you. So the important thing is that you start out with an expectation of nap time is something that we do. Nap time is good for you. Nap time is good for mom. Nap time is good for everybody. If your baby's little, your toddler is little, you don't even have to explain this to them. If they are older and they're 2, they're 3, they're 4, maybe you can explain to them that they don't have to sleep, but they do have to stay in their bed, and they can't get out of bed, and they need to just lie in bed and rest and close their eyes. Because you can't force anybody to sleep, but you can't tell them that they have to stay in bed and be quiet. They can't talk and they can't get up and they have to lie in bed. And then probably they will fall asleep. So starting with the newborns, I've never put any of my newborns on a sleep schedule. But by the time they're 3 months old, they naturally fall into a pattern of their own. So if you're a new mom and you have a newborn, just count down the days until they're 12 weeks old, because at 12 weeks, 3 months, life gets a lot easier, a lot more predictable. Just hang in there for that 4th trimester. That's really the rough part. And even me, who's had 12 babies now, I still count down to that 3-month mark because it gets significantly easier. And typically by the time they get to be 3 months old, you will also find that they will have fallen into a pattern of predictable sleeping. And it has not been identical for all of our kids, but has been very similar. And that's typically that they, in the morning after I get up, they typically continue sleeping until around 9 a.m. And then when they get up, they're up for a little bit, and they go basically from 3 naps a day mid-morning, early afternoon, early evening, to 2 naps a day, which is then, say, maybe from like 11 to 1, and then again from like 2 to 4. And then that's kind of the hardest phase, because basically if you have other kids in the house, they're napping. So if they take 3 naps, mid-morning, early afternoon, and midday, the early afternoon is typically when the toddlers nap and the preschoolers. So when your baby takes 3 naps, this one coincides with the other nappers. But when they go down to 2 naps, then the other kids nap in between. So this is the hardest phase. And I try to make this phase as short as possible when they only take 2 naps. And I would say that by the time they're 3 months old, most kids fall into the 3 nap schedule of their own. And then around 6 to 10 months is typically when they're in the 2 nap schedule. And by the time they're 1 year old, you can expect them to fall into the 1 nap schedule. And maybe they kind of want to fall asleep earlier, like 12, 12:30, a little bit earlier than your other kids. And you might have to slowly nudge that back. But the goal is to get everybody napping in the early afternoon at the same time, like my kids are right now. That way, you only have to be quiet for part of the day. And at nighttime, it's a whole different thing. So at night, the way that we've gotten most of our sleep is that all my babies, all 12 of my kids, have slept in bed with me for approximately the first 2 years of their life. So you can call that co-sleeping, you can call that bed sharing. I've always had our babies in bed with us. And the reason for that is that it's just so much easier when you're breastfeeding to roll over, pull the baby up, nurse them, and then everybody goes back to sleep. In fact, you can sleep while you're nursing. It's a little bit harder now. Oliver is my 12th baby. He's my first baby that takes a bottle during the night. This is new to me. My other kids, even if they were taking a bottle in the daytime, still preferred to nurse at night. He does not. So it's a little bit different, but I still find that by getting everything set up on my nightstand, getting the bottles with a formula in them, and then just having a thermos with hot water that I just pour in and shake the bottle up, it's still easy. I just kind of lay him down in a way where I can prop the bottle against my shoulder, and we kind of doze like that until he's done. I put the bottle away and we go back to sleep. But even if it weren't easier, it just, I think it's safer, and it's definitely more cuddly and pleasant. Now, speaking of safety, many people think that sharing a bed with your baby is not safe because of SIDS. And I'm sure that there's a factor to that. But the SIDS epidemic is not what it is in the US and the whole rest of the world. In the whole rest of the world, this does not seem to be nearly as great a danger. And I think the reason for that, and I'm not a doctor, so this is not medical advice, this is my opinion, and it's just for your information only. I believe that a huge reason behind the SIDS is the chemicals that the babies are inhaling if they are sleeping face down on a mattress. Because the mattresses, they use certain propellants to make plastics into foam for the mattress. That's one bad chemical. And then the other bad chemical is the flame retardant that the mattresses are doused in. So these chemicals on their own off gas, but when they react with each other and react with skin cells that kind of feed the wrong kind of bacteria, they create some really bad off-gassing. And the off-gassing is a neurotoxin. And because it affects their nervous system negatively, the breathing reflex is negatively affected, because breathing is a reflex, and in babies and premature babies especially, it is immature. And when you have an immature reflex, and I don't know, you might have seen this on your baby sometimes, you can watch them just stop breathing for 5-10 seconds, and you kind of unnerved and you're looking at them, and then they go, and then they start breathing again, because something in their brain kicks in to make the breathing start again. So if that's disrupted, if they have an immature nervous system, or if the nervous system is interrupted because of these toxins coming in, then they never have that take a deep breath and keep going moment, and they basically just stop breathing and die in their sleep. But the chemicals, I believe, play a huge part in that, which is why when you lay your baby on their back, they're not getting nearly as much of that, because imagine being with your nose against the gas versus up from it. And now they say to run a fan overhead, which keeps the air circulating, which is basically the same idea. It just dissipates those bad fumes away from the baby's face. So, with that being said, there are other countries. I know Australia did a huge, massive study in the early 2000s where they would take the baby's cribs and they would wrap them. They had special encasings for the mattresses so that no gases could come off the mattress, and their SIDS rate went down to like virtually zero. And you can find that all on Google. And in other countries where mattresses are not routine standard treated with flame retardants, they don't have these SIDS rates. So in the United States, so if you live outside the United States, this is different, but in the United States, practically all soft furnishings in the house are treated with flame retardants, including sleepwear for children. Unless you buy cotton sleepwear that's really snug and it'll say on there, your child will die if they wear this and you're not careful. In not so many words, but basically they have just it's all about liability and insurance and whatnot. So even children's sleepwear is treated with flame retardants. And in the US, mattresses are doused in flame retardants and also these really bad chemicals for the propellants. Now, you can buy organic mattresses, not all organic mattresses, but you can buy organic mattresses that instead of flame retardant, the only way they get out of that requirement, it is a requirement by law, the only way they get out of it is if they contain a certain amount of wool, and that wool is basically the topmost layer inside the mattress, because wool is naturally flame retardant. So if you have a mattress that is made without flame retardants and without weird chemicals, then your child will sleep so much safer, even on their stomach, even in bed with you. So we have mattresses that were made by we bought them from a mattress place in town, but they're made by I don't know if they're Amish or Mennonite, but some people like that. And it's basically just the metal coils. And then it is stuffed with organic cotton. It has wool, and then it is encased, like the outer fabric is organic cotton. And we've had those mattresses for probably 10 years now, and they are so wonderful. I mean, they don't sag at all. They're just really great. When I travel, I miss my mattress. It's that bad. No flame retardants. So all my babies have slept in bed with me, but on top of that, they've slept on their stomach. When I lay them down for the nap, I lay them on their stomach because they sleep so much better on their stomach. If you were to sleep on your back, and now they tell you don't put a blanket on the baby, just lay them down in a sleep sack. If you were to lay me on my back like this, I might startle myself awake too. They sleep much better, snug on their stomach, kind of tucked in with their feet under them and their arms tucked in by their side. Because then when they startle in their sleep, which they will do, then they startle themselves awake. Whereas if they're on their stomach when they startle, then they kind of just snuggle in like they would snuggle against mom. So one of the important things to getting a good night's sleep for me has not just been having the babies in bed with me, having them sleep on their stomach. And again, I am disclaiming any liability that you want to ascribe if you don't think sleeping on the stomach is safe. That is a cultural thing. I think that even here, until recently, I would say maybe it was right around the late 90s that it really became a thing of back to sleep, and that became a campaign. So the ABCs of safe sleeping is alone on their back in a crib, ABC. And when I had Oliver at the hospital, I had to watch all these videos about that. And that's the big agenda now. But clearly the reason why they have to push it so hard is because it's not what intuitively moms would do. And it's not what we've done culturally until maybe the last 30 years or so. So my daughter actually, when she was at the hospital, she thought they were saying, this is how your child feels if they're alone on their back in a crib. They're sad. She didn't realize, no, this is what they're telling you to do. So I don't subscribe to that. And we've never had, obviously, any case of SIDS or anything near it. All our kids are super healthy. But that being said, I do use an organic mattress that does not contain any chemicals in the processing or flame retardant. And also, obviously, if you are intoxicated, you should not sleep next to your baby. And people often talk about a story in the Bible where There are two prostitutes and they both have a baby and they live in the same house. And one of the prostitutes, her baby dies in the middle of the night. And she goes and gets the other prostitute's baby and pretends that it's hers. And they fight over whose baby is the living one and whose is the dead one. And they go all the way to King Solomon, and he judges very wisely. And people will use that as an example. See, having babies in bed with you is not safe. But there are a lot of problems with the story. Number one, these women are prostitutes, so they might be intoxicated. They might not be the most responsible parents out there. And the fact that they can't agree on whose the living baby is, I mean, every mother knows her baby. They do have their own unique looks. So to not recognize their own baby, that's kind of weird. And thirdly, just because they say, or the mother whose baby died says, that the baby died because she overlaid it, that might not be so. I mean, maybe she didn't overlay it with herself. Maybe she smothered it in blankets. So I'm not saying to like pile 10 comforters onto your baby in bed at night. That's also not safe. Or maybe she's just outright lying. Maybe she was irresponsible. Maybe the child came to harm. But the only way that she would not be held responsible is if she said it was an accident, staged as an accident. That still happens to this day, that people harm their child and then they want to say it was an accident. So that's the problems with those stories. I would not draw from that it is not safe to sleep in bed with your baby. I guess it's not if you live in a brothel and you have one room and there's other prostitutes and their babies around, then it might not be safe. So if you're drunk, if you're incapacitated, intoxicated, or even if you're very morbidly obese, I've heard that sometimes those people are not as aware of their where they're at spatially, and those are not safe. So there are, even if your baby's in bed with you, there are things to be safe. Now, there is another example in the Bible, and this is a good example, where Jesus tells a parable of somebody coming to his friend in the middle of the night asking for bread. And this is us as Christians coming to God and asking him for the things we want. And Jesus says that, the man is in bed and he says, my children are in bed with me and I don't want to rise and give you bread. I'm in bed. My kids are here. I don't want to wake them all. And that's a positive story. And in that story, the man who's in bed with his kids is actually, in that parable, he's representative of God. So I'm not saying that to say that the morally correct way to sleep is with your kids in bed, but I am saying that it's not sinful. And in fact, it's put in a positive light in the Bible. And if that works for you and you're getting the right amount of sleep that way, then that's the best way to sleep. But like I said, you want to be safe with that. So anyway, newborns, they're unpredictable. By 12 weeks, expect them to have fallen into a predictable pattern. For most babies, there will be 3 naps at that point. And then that'll go down to 2 naps. And you want to cut that 2 nap phase as short as possible and then go ideally from 3 naps to 1 nap, 1 long nap. Because that way that 1 nap or their middle nap when they have 3 naps coincides with the time when the toddlers and the preschoolers nap. And yes, nap they must. Now, for toddlers and preschoolers and babies, I would never put more than 1 child per room to nap. So even if your kids share rooms, maybe you have a preschooler and a toddler sharing a room, don't put them in the same room to nap. It will not work. They need their own space. So what I've done at our old house when we had kids sharing a room that both napped is that one of them would nap in my bedroom or one of them would nap in another bedroom where they wouldn't normally sleep. So you basically want to give each of them their own space. And then the rest of the house is expected to do their schoolwork quietly or do other things quietly so as to not be a disruption, including not walking around. Even if it's silent, something about, I'm going to sound really foo-foo, but it just throws off the whole energy in the house. If people are coming and going, even if it's silent, the kids will wake up. They can just sense that. Whereas if everybody's at their desk or in a game room, quietly reading or quietly playing by themselves, that's really, really important. And most importantly, it will give you a breather in the middle of the day. Because having kids really feels like having your head held underwater. And having your head held underwater is not so bad when you know that you will come up for air and when you will come up for air. It's kind of like when you're working and you know, okay, at 10:30 I get a break. Then it's okay to keep working because you're not wondering, will I get a break? When will I get a break? So that nap is super important. And that nap has to happen until they're in first grade or reach 6 years old, whichever one works for your family there. And then at night, kids do not get to stay up as late as they want. I would say that elementary age and down need to be going to bed around 7:30, and then maybe by the time they're tweens, like 10 to 12, maybe around 8:30. But in our house, I mean, the only one who goes to bed whenever he wants to is our oldest at home. He's 18, John. He goes to bed whenever he feels like it. But even the teenagers at home, I'm a little bit more lenient now. It used to be that bedtime was 9 or 9:30. Sometimes I let the oldest go until 10 if they're quiet and just minding their own business. But that's the drop dead latest. Usually on weeknights, it's 9 o'clock for them to be in bed. And that just gives everybody an expectation of where to be when, and for you, something to look forward to, where you can do maybe your paperwork quietly without disruptions, or you can sit down and I like to embroider late at night. That's what I do at night. And it just gives everybody an expectation of where to be. Now, that brings up another thing, and that ties in with naps closely, and that's schedules in general. And again, I'm not talking about imposing schedules, because I don't do that, especially not with the babies. I don't do this, let them cry it out on a certain schedule. Or this book, My First 300 Babies, was really popular when we went to Bible college. And the kid, I do follow a pattern, and I think that's very, very helpful for the kids. So you can call that a schedule, but it's not hard and fast by exact times. There's kind of just like benchmarks, and then in between the benchmarks, we follow a pattern. So the bedtime would be a benchmark, but I never wake my kids in the morning. When they go down to nap would be a benchmark, but I never wake them up from their naps. It's not like, okay, 1 to 4 is nap time. Don't get up before then. You can't sleep beyond 4 o'clock either. So I think that it helps kids to know that there's a certain routine and that they can't stay up till all hours of the night. And this seems to be a new thing in the homeschool world. And I've even heard it called with different names, but basically where kids, if they prefer to be up all night because they're a night owl and then sleep all day, then that's okay. And I'm telling you, it's not okay. It's not good for you. Your circadian rhythm is greatly disrupted by that. And the quality of sleep is not the same. Now, there's another book about that, and you can find that also on Audible, and that is called Sleep. And let me find it in my library so I can show you. I'm sorry, it's not called Sleep. It's called Why We Sleep. I have it here. No, I don't want to listen. It wants me to listen to it right now. Title details. Okay, this is a really good book, Why We Sleep. And it explains to you the benefits of time sleeping and getting enough sleep. Really good book. I've listened to it several times, but I always fall asleep. So even though I've listened to it probably a half dozen times, I don't have a coherent, complete overview of the entire book. The reading book, it'll just put you to sleep like nobody's business. So, but the book explains very well why we need to sleep and what it's important for and proper sleep amounts. So, I guess to sum it all up, I would say kids need routine. They need more sleep than you might realize, just because of the American culture telling you that kids get to pick when they sleep and that 2-year-olds might not need a nap. Anytime a mom tells me her 2-year-old doesn't nap, I just feel sorry for her. If a mom of a 2-year-old tells me the 2-year-old doesn't nap, I'm just like, I don't say this, but I'm just thinking, you are really making life hard for yourself, because I could not spend, even after 21 years of being a parent, I could not spend an entire day with a 2-year-old without them going to sleep for an hour and a half or 2 hours. That is really difficult. And to do that on a daily basis, that would wear me out and I'd be institutionalized. So that kid needs a nap. Now, sleep cycles typically go in 90 minutes. So a nap could be one 90-minute cycle. It could be two 90-minute cycles. If they sleep through a 90 minutes, they probably are going to go close on 2.5 hours. And again, at night also, if they wake up in the middle of the night, it'll probably take an hour and a half to get them back to sleep, but then they'll sleep in increments of an hour and a half maybe an hour and a half, maybe 3 hours, maybe 4.5. But that's just what we've done, and I feel like I'm in really good health. I feel like I'm on top of things. I don't feel like I'm sleep deprived. I don't think the kids are sleep deprived, and they're all growing well and healthy. And that's the other thing. Just like we only heal in our sleep, kids only grow in their sleep. So if the toddler doesn't want to sleep, you can explain to them, hey, you only grow when you're sleeping. So let's go take a nap. And I bet you when you wake up, I'm going to be able to tell that you grew. Like I can tell you grew in this nap time. They might not understand that they need to sleep, but that's when they grow, and that's when their body regenerates. Also, that's why they need so much more sleep, because they grow so much more than we don't grow anymore at all. But we still have to repair our body. So I would say a huge proponent of naps, huge proponent of having a schedule, having expectations of kids, and maybe making it fun for them. Maybe turn on an audiobook at night or things like that. Yeah, Jordan, I almost said that. I only grow white. I almost said that. Anyway, if you have any questions, I'm going to look back through the comments now, and if there's anything, I'm going to address it. Okay, so first of all, I'm really sorry about the audio. I'm really technically inept. I'm kind of like, when it comes to technology, I'm like a 90-year-old. Karen can attest to this because sometimes she helps me with my technology. Do we have no coffee addicts today? Nobody needed that sermon on coffee? Okay, let's see here. Okay, Jordan with the 4-year-old. Yeah, 4-year-olds. Yeah, 4-year-olds can be like that. Some of them, some kids do need less sleep than others, and some kids naturally want to sleep more than others. But yeah, I would say at 4, they definitely still have to be down. I mean, even if they're just lying in bed reading, but to bed, close your eyes and don't get up, and maybe sleep will come. Yeah, the mattress thing. So to get more information on the mattresses, just Google it. There's tons of information out there. This is widely known, although not publicized, but it's those neurotoxins from the mattresses. How and when do I transition a breastfed baby from bed sharing to their own bed/room? I typically do it around age 2 to 2.5. And if I have a new baby, then I just have one baby sleep on one side of me and the other baby on the other side of me. And around the time that they're getting to be 2.5, I move them to a toddler bed or in with one of their older siblings if they have a full-size bed instead of a twin-size bed. And it's never been a big issue. I typically night wean around 12 to 14 months. And I have a video on that. I don't want to go into that today, but I have a routine that I followed with all of them. It's not hard for me to wean because my milk supply is so crummy. My kids are like, not worth it anyway. So if you have a really good milk supply, which is far preferable, it might be harder to get the baby to give up the breast. But I typically night wean around 12 to 15 months, and then I keep them in bed because they're just so sweet and cuddly. And around 2, I transition them, and it's never been a big deal. We just say, this is your own bed. You get to be a big kid. And because they're typically moving in with a sibling, either into their room or into even a sibling's bed at first, it's always been real easy. Eva was still in my bed when Oliver was born. So she was almost 3, and she transitioned out of my bed right around the time she was 3, which she was the latest. And we just put up a nice toddler bed in the girls' room, got her new bedding. It was I don't want to say rough for the first couple of weeks, but she would wake up. Now she doesn't. She wakes up in the morning and she comes to my bed and snuggles. So it's, I mean, for me, it hasn't been difficult. Maybe because I wait till they're 2.5. I don't know. It's not been, we just say, okay, this is where you sleep now. All right, Jordan says she has a friend whose pastor has a sermon about not having babies in your bed. Yeah, so that's the opposite extreme. See, I don't know that he can teach that because, like I said, if that's the way you get your best sleep, then that's great. But oh my goodness, it has been the highlight of my everyday for 21 years and going has been getting to bed at night after a long, long, long day. It might be 12 when I go to bed, And then at midnight when I go to bed, I realize, oh, somebody ran the toilet paper empty. And oh, there's no toilet paper in the cupboard. You have to go to the garage. And then when I get to the garage, I realize that somebody left the fridge open or the garage door open or left some other booby trap for me. And sometimes I start heading to bed at midnight and it'll be 1 o'clock by the time I'm actually in bed from all the hidden booby traps I put out. So after a very, very long day, it has been the highlight of my everyday to get there and just get to snuggle with my baby. That has just been, I think I've cherished that most about parenting is those quiet moments in the middle of the night when they're asleep and you can look at them and there is nothing sweeter than a sleeping baby and you can pat them and you can rub them and you can smell their head and you can thank God for them. And I would not trade that for anything. I don't think I could sleep if my baby were in the other room. Because as it is, I still, every night before I go to bed, I still make the rounds, go into every child's room. I kiss and cuddle the little ones that are asleep. I look at the older ones, and the only one I don't check up on is my 18-year-old son. I think he'd be horrified if I went and checked on him in the middle of the night. So yeah, I can't imagine not having my baby there. So for that pastor to preach that, well, maybe that's what works best for him. I'm just not sure that it's preaching material. All right, Tanya is confessing her sins here. She is a major coffee addict. Well, Tanya, if it works for you. Now, if you find that you are sleeping and sleep deprived and tired, it might be the caffeine to blame. Okay, Jordan has a topic idea, side hustle and mama business in a large family. Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm the right expert for that. I'm kind of more yeah, that's a good idea though. And I think that's a great one because I think that, I think most of us enjoy that for several reasons. I mean, obviously the additional income, but also just doing something other than taking care of kids. So I think that would be a great topic where we can hear from others on that maybe have more experience in this than I do. So maybe we should plan for that for being the public one on Wednesday, 4 weeks from today, which would be Wednesday, March 1st. If I don't, 1, 2, 3, oops. Okay, my calendar, just 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, maybe Wednesday, March 1st, because maybe other people have feedback on that, because I'm probably not the best with that. So, okay, so Tanya is cutting corners there with the melatonin. But I'm glad it works for you. If that works for you, you know. Yes, Jordan, what is your side hustle? You have to tell us in the comments. What is your side hustle? And I don't think it's failing. It must be, I mean, we have to figure out how to switch you into a live. I'll have to talk to you about that when we're not on live. But Karen is the queen of side hustle. I hope that doesn't sound bad in English, but she is really, really good with that. And she keeps me on track. And she's this awesome resource for that. And I think that's important, like I said, for multiple reasons. Anyway, if you have any more questions about the sleeping and kids, you can leave that in the comments once this video goes live, because this chat might not show up later, and then I can respond to it there. But just in general, just make them sleep, don't feel bad, and expect them to sleep probably more than they are sleeping, and at the hours that work for you. And it'll do everybody a world of good. Anyway, well, thank you so much for joining today. And I really appreciate, especially those of you that are members. And yes, only less than 4 months until we leave for Germany. We are leaving at the end of May, so a little less than 4 months out now. And we are super excited. It's really coming down to it. And this is just one of the ways that helps us be able to pay for that trip. Anyway, thank you so much for joining. And I hope that something in here was helpful for you. Have a wonderful rest of your week. God bless you.